Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Small Biz Stories. And you know me, your host, Dr. LL. We've done this a few times now, that every week we bring you amazing guests. Today we've got Jensen Savage, one of those wonderful surnames that I wish I had. And she is the founder behind Savage Growth Partners. And if that's not enough of an intro to get you excited, I don't know what is. Jensen, welcome to the show.
Hello, thanks so much for having me.
Well, let's dig into it. I always like to give our guests who are enjoying the auditory experience, they might be dialing in from iHeartRadio, Spotify, or whatnot, a little sense of the visual. So describe yourself, the room you're in, just kind of give people a flavor of okay, this is kind of what you're about.
Yeah, so I am in my home office right now. I've got some, what would you call these wooden acoustic panels behind me on the wall here. I've got a palm tree and I've got my 2 Comma Club award behind me. And then as far as my personal appearance, I've got long brown curly hair and I'm wearing a blue shirt.
There you go. See, that's enough of it for people. Okay, gives a sense. Now, I like to ask my guests what you are really good at, like superpower level abilities. I'm not talking about what you do in your business. We're going to get to that. But what you, Jensen, what are you awesome at doing?
Yeah, so I would say overall, I'm very good at seeing the big picture in situations, not just in business, but in life. And I think kind of taking that to business has really kind of upped the ante on what I'm able to accomplish and do. So I think that's definitely one of my big strengths. The other one I would say is that I'm a combination of both creative and analytical. I'm really good at coming up with new ideas, but I'm also really good at kind of diving into data and statistics to really kind of tell a story from there as well.
And having seen that around myself and looking at some of the other people and talking to so many different clients and other entrepreneurs over the years, that's a rare combination.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You definitely see more one or the other. And so that's kind of when I realized that about myself, I really wanted to lean into that because I think, as you mentioned, it is a unique skill set. And that's why coming into companies, I think I'm able to see more success on the marketing and growth front because being able to tie together those two pieces is really, really important.
It is. It's absolutely essential to marketing. I mean, gone are the days where you put out an ad in a magazine, like a print ad, taking that vehicle to try to communicate your message, and everybody goes, "Oh, bravo, it's lovely." And you're promoting it, and you have a little coupon, and then you bring it over to the store, and you go to Macy's, and for example, you buy your perfume or whatever it is that from, those ads gone by, then you could really track it.
Hmm.
Nowadays, how do you track it? You need pretty sophisticated analytics and digital methodologies, right, to be able to
Hmm.
different beast.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And that's something I really try to hammer home with clients or even just other business owners that I meet. That is one of the biggest differentiating factors between businesses that are going to be successful and businesses that kind of get stuck at a certain point is well, you can make even millions of dollars not really dialing in on specific channels that are working, specific messaging that's working, but eventually you're going to hit a point where you have to be able to dive deeper into the data and say, okay, what's our exact return here? How much are we paying to get a customer here? How can we increase the lifetime value from people that come from this channel? So there's so many different pieces of data that you have to have dialed in, especially once you get to a certain point in a business. And that's definitely it's a difficult thing because you've got so many tools out there. You've got all the different channels that you have to tie back into, your CRM and everything. So it's easier said than done, but it also is incredibly important, as you know.
I've seen a lot of avoidance. For example, people are generally, oh, we'll call it for what it is, math phobic. They hate Excel. They glaze over when they see spreadsheets, right? And it's like, I don't care about my analytics.
Hmm.
What do you have to say to those folks?
Well, I think it's one of those things that it's just a part of the process. So if you're completely resistant to it, you've got to have somebody on your team that can really dive into those numbers and understand them. Um, and this is coming from somebody that I used to always say, I hate math. I hate math. Growing up in school, always hated math. I preferred, English, philosophy, history, all those things. But math, it was just always so just up in the air. But I also think too, if you can have a deeper understanding of the numbers in your business, that's a huge competitive advantage. For example, instead of just seeing, a number on a page and just thinking, oh, this is just a percentage. It's like, well, think about kind of the bigger picture, out of people that are landing on a landing page of yours, how many of those people are actually taking the next step? How many of those people are actually becoming a customer? And thinking of it kind of in that more, I guess, solid way. That's the best way I can describe it. Instead of just seeing kind of these numbers that are up in the sky, really kind of trying to put that to the customer journey and how that might look. For me, anyway, as somebody that's not super into like math and percentages and whatnot, being able to kind of take those numbers and tie them into that overall vision and story, that's definitely helpful. So that might help some people out there that are kind of just not about the math in general, but maybe if you can kind of think about it in a different way, I think it's really helpful.
To me, it boils down to dollars, right?
Mhm.
There's a whole bunch of other metrics, and the number of people that go to your website may not be directly correlated with the numbers that you have. You're just, it's an awareness vehicle, and it's harder to calculate kind of downstream what those numbers are because there's no specific event like a transaction. Maybe you're not an e-commerce site, and
Mhm.
so you don't like buy the thing and stick it in your cart and count those, but you're getting visitors to the website. It can be really hard, but it's really
Yeah.
important because it means money. Like I
Yeah.
always say, invisible brands don't make money. You
Yep.
need to look at the
Yeah.
thing.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that goes into being able to see the bigger picture. That's why it's so important to have somebody on your team that can look at your marketing strategy, your growth strategy as a big ecosystem rather than just looking at one channel and going, okay, this didn't generate us money, so let's cut it. It's like, well, this brand awareness channel might be contributing to other people to where they're seeing your ads. Now they're more likely to convert because they've already seen your billboard or they've seen the brand awareness campaign that you were running. It's all tied into each other and it's very complex and interconnected. And so you've really got to be able to look at it from that high level view because some things you just can't track. Like you said, you can't track how many people have seen your billboard and how that's impacted them. It's a really hard thing to quantify when it comes to actually putting it to numbers.
Exactly. And I think that you hit the nail on the head there, Jensen, that it really is about today's complexity. Things
Hmm.
I know, like as a person who I describe myself as a techno weenie, right? I build software things and do all this kind of stuff. I've been in digital marketing pretty much since the field was born, and because
Hmm.
I'm old. And so I've seen all of that stuff. But that said, the level of complexity has just grown like astronomically in the
Hmm.
last 5 to 10 years. And it keeps getting more and more complicated with all these different channels. So if you can't keep up, which is understandable, then, like you said, align yourself with someone who is really deep in the throes of it because everything is so interconnected. You've got to make smart decisions. You can't just kill your Instagram because you only have X number of followers. It might be the place where most of your audience lives and gets to know your brand, right? So
Hmm.
how do you measure that?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's definitely a tough one, but I think yeah, if it's hard for you to kind of grasp as a business owner, like you said, lean into somebody that can, because it really makes the difference too between businesses that make money and then get stuck at a certain point and businesses that really build that brand where it's like you have people that recognize your business name, you have people that are coming inbound to you because you've built this thing that's bigger than yourself instead of just focusing on one-off tactics or having to tie everything to like this didn't get us a customer, it's completely worthless. Like you said, your Instagram might be a great awareness vehicle for you. Maybe you aren't able to tie that directly back to a customer, but it's still a useful piece in your overall marketing mix.
Now, that said, given your namesake and your business, you're eponymously right, named after you here, that being savage about your growth, doesn't that mean that we've got to be, well, I guess, really embracing ruthless prioritization so that we
Hmm.
say, oh, yeah, you know what? We're not going to be on Blue Sky and Twitter and Substack and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and blah, 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 blah.
Hmm.
Where do you start to draw the lines with respect to your approach of being savage about marketing and getting people dialed into exactly what they need?
Yeah, great question. So Especially earlier on in my career, I worked with a lot of businesses that were starting out. So whether they were startups or just younger companies in general, you don't really have the luxury of having millions of dollars to be able to spread across all these channels and to hire this, 20-person team where everybody's focusing on a different piece of the puzzle. So you have to be very selective in the things that you're doing and make sure that you're pulling the right levers, or at least have um, an overall idea of where you should start. And that's a big mistake that I see businesses make, is thinking that you have to be everywhere rather than just trying to be in the right places in general, and sometimes that really just boils down to using common sense, right? If you're a local nail salon, LinkedIn might not be the place that you want to dedicate hours and hours or a bunch of money to. So you've really got to prioritize ruthlessly. And I think the other thing that plays into that is being quick to pivot. If something's not working, or you're finding yourself dumping all this effort into this thing that's not working, you've made changes, you've tried to make it work, and it just doesn't hit for your business, and you've got a solid idea that that's just not going to work. Be willing to say, okay, take your ego out of it and say, okay, let's switch gears here. Let's do this instead. I think that's another big differentiator that I'll see between businesses that take it to the next level and businesses that get stuck, is, thinking like, we've got to make this work, rather than, okay, if this isn't our channel, if this isn't our tactic, let's do a different thing.
You said a trigger word in there, ego, right? I almost want to like hear the reverb on it. Ego, ego,
Yeah.
ego, right? That What's your take on it with respect to your client base or just other entrepreneurs and small business owners you find in general? Do you think that their egos are so big that they're unwilling to hear the news, hey, don't do this, or it's not you personally? Or do you think that there's a, I guess, deeper intention on having success that they're willing to kind of, pare down the ego? What side of that equation are you seeing?
It's definitely a mix. I honestly think I've seen people from one end of the spectrum to the other, where I'll see people that are completely willing and able to detach from their ego to say, hey, you're better at this than me. I trust you to run with it. If it's not working, scrap it. If my idea is bad, tell me it's bad, and, do a better idea. Or you have some people that are very attached to the idea of how things should be, or how they think things should be, where they're unable to put their own personal ego in the back seat in order for the betterment of the business. And it's not to, talk down on those people, because it's a difficult thing to do, especially when it's your business that you've created from scratch. You have this emotional connection to it in some degree. 9 out of 10 times you've got some deeper connection to the business, why you started it, where your vision is for the business. And so that's a hard thing to detach from, but it's, in my opinion, extremely important to be able to do that and make those decisions, separating yourself from the business and say, okay, I thought this was going to work. This is what I had in mind for the vision of this campaign or the vision of the business overall. But the market is telling me this isn't going to work. And so I'm going to listen to that.
And I like to ask questions in and around the area of gender differences. So I've asked folks, my guests on my show have been representative of all genders, or at least many, many genders. And what I see and what they've seen is a pattern where women, as the entrepreneurs, tend to be a little bit more emotional. And I can say this, I'm a chicky poo poo, that we tend to be more emotionally connected in the outcome and in the representation of our business, where I've seen even and tried to learn from my male counterparts who are better at being more ruthless about their prioritizations and making decisions. Yeah, I'm going to cut this, I'm going to cut that. It's not working. Next, move on. Because they're more myopically fixated on the success of the outcome rather than the emotional connection to the outcome. Is
Mhm.
that fair, or have I just alienated half of our audience? Are you seeing this too?
Um, I've honestly seen quite a mix, which is surprising. I think more than anything, what I've seen as far as um being emotional, in my experience, has actually been tied to somebody's level of exposure to business. So if I'm working with somebody who is brand new to the business world, they're typically more emotional because I think, you don't know what you don't know. And so if you don't know the data behind your business, you don't understand business strategy on a deep level, well, you have nothing else to cling on to except for your emotions. Whereas I've seen people when they've run multiple successful businesses, and this could be correlation or causation, just people that are able to detach emotionally are a little bit better at growing businesses, but they're more likely to favor the numbers and objective data rather than saying, I don't feel good about this, cut it, or whatever it is. So that's definitely a trend I've seen. But as far as gender, I don't know, honestly. In my experience, it's been pretty varied. I've met quite a few men that are more emotional than you would think that they would be. I think men are just, in my experience, more emotional in a different way. I think women are more emotional in the sense that they kind of go inward a little bit with their emotions. They get kind of down on themselves, where I think men are a little bit more outward and they're more willing to kind of like disparage somebody else or something like that. That's in my experience as a whole. That's what I've seen. I'm not saying all men or all women are like that, but just in my career, that's what I've seen.
No, no, it's just, and it's really interesting perspectives. And like everything has a bell curve, right? You're going to see some people of this on this side of the curve, and you're going to see some people of that or whatever on the other side of the curve. Got it. But that's a really interesting insight that it was more about the maturity and experience level with
Mm-hmm.
operating businesses of where you see the emotional connection or ability to disconnect. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
really good. I'm going to probe on that, not with you further, but with other guests as I
Yeah.
continue the series of the show. I think it's takes things in a new angle. Might be age related, right? Might be, I don't know. We'll
Mm-hmm.
right. We'll just keep playing with that, won't we, Jensen? So getting back to what you do and offering tips to entrepreneurs and small business owners with respect to their marketing. You've given us several already about the importance of leaning on others who know the space, who are more comfortable with it, the criticality of having both of these sides. So you've got the I guess the reaction, right? The emotional reaction to whatever the ad campaign is, but then the of course the data behind it, right? To see in the analytics, is it working or is it not working? What other tips do you want to share with our audience about their approach?
Ooh, that's a big question. I think the big thing that you've got to figure out with your service or product is your unique value proposition. Everybody I think has hopefully heard that before, but I think that's something you've really got to understand. And not when it just comes to features or benefits. I'm a big proponent of being able to dial in on the transformational value that whatever it is that you do provides. You've got to know how to bridge that gap and demonstrate to your audience, here's how we're going to take you from this to this, whatever that is. If you're selling Botox, it's, feeling self conscious or not wanting to look at your wrinkles in the mirror to feeling confident and 20 years younger and vibrant again. Whatever it is, you've got to understand how to bridge that gap and really hammer that into the heads of your prospects to where they can see that value. They can see that your product or service is going to work for them. And I think being able to demonstrate that alone is one of the biggest things you can dial into and really understand in your marketing or your sales.
Now, again, for the benefit of those that are having just the auditory experience, I'm curious why Jensen selected Botox as the example to go to as I'm sitting here a week of 6 a.m. to 1 a.m.s with a couple of really big monster grants that are due. And I've been burning the midnight oil. And at my age, because I'm older than Jensen, clearly just looking at the screens here, at my age, you can't hide a lack of sleep. You just can't anymore. You don't bounce back from that. So I just thought I'd add a little bit of color and fun in there.
Hey, I've got to say, I've worked with a lot of service businesses, so that's why I brought it up. That's why I brought it up.
It's all good. It's all good. Like again, that's the thing, right? The data they're going to show. You can't go out, I can't go out there and say, oh yeah, I'm 25 years old. I don't look it. I'm not indulging in that kind of level of plastic surgery and procedures to bring me to that level, nor do I want to. But it's also where it would be inauthentic, right? And
Mhm.
disingenuous, which is not part of my brand. It's who I
Mhm.
am. What you see is what you get. Yes, you are seeing tired Loralyn this week, and there we go, right? But all good. So moving along here, when we talk about making these decisions and doing the marketing and bringing it in, are there tendencies for people to want to do too much up front, that they should maybe take a more measured and I guess more um, like prudent approach where let's try this for now. If it goes well, then add this. Talk
Mhm.
to us about what you've seen and what you advise your clients along that spectrum.
Yeah, I definitely see that a lot because especially when you're a smaller business or you're coming into a new market, business owners have a tendency to look at what other people are doing and think, we've got to do that. What they don't see though is everything behind the curtain of you don't know how much money this business is making. You don't know if this is even working. Maybe you're seeing they're running ads, but maybe their ads are not profitable on this particular channel. So, not to say don't look at competitors and don't, figure out what it is that they're doing, but I think there's this FOMO almost of seeing other people with similar businesses doing this one thing and thinking, okay, well, we have to do that. So I definitely see that a lot. Um, as far as the ideal way to approach it, I think it's a matter of striking a balance. Um, you want to be measured in your approach, but I think you can also overthink things to the point where you're like doing one thing and hyper focusing on that and missing out on this whole world outside of that one channel or tactic or whatever it is that you're focusing on. So I think building a strategy that's more focused to start does make sense and then branching out from there. For example, if you know that Facebook and Instagram ads, you're probably going to be able to get cheaper, faster leads for your service. It might make sense to start there because you're going to be able to see a return on your investment quicker than you may get with Google ads because typically Google ads take longer to ramp up. Your lead costs are a little bit higher. So maybe it's like, okay, we'll take the profit that we're making from this effort and then start to dial it up a bit and expand channels out. So I think you've got to strike the balance between being measured and careful, but not being so prudent to where you're not making any moves and really just getting stuck on one thing.
Well, it's that whole, right, analysis paralysis, and they call it the
Mhm.
conundrum of choice, right? Like these two principles are at play here because it's easy to feel just completely overwhelmed by like, oh my God, do I do this? Do I do TikTok shop? Do I do this? Do I have my e-commerce,
Mhm.
my site, my this, my that, um, and my shopping carts, my, all of the rest of that stuff, right? On top of everything else. And so you
Mhm.
think, ooh, where do I go? And I tend to advise folks and say, well, start with one.
Mhm.
It's not to lose sight of the big picture. I do think it's important to have that competitive insight, but it's also where you said aptly that you can easily get FOMO. It's like, oh my goodness, they're here, they're there, they're there. And like you said, you don't know. Maybe they're spreading themselves so thin because they saw somebody else doing it
Mhm.
that they're replicating the model, but the model may not be working. Like we don't know.
Mhm. And that's the danger of focusing on tactics rather than principles and strategies, is getting so caught up in this competitor's doing this on this channel or they're using this tool, so I have to do it. Well, think about the overall strategy and your mission, your vision, what actually matters to your business. Does that actually support that? Or are you just getting FOMO because this new tool came out that you feel like you have to jump on the bandwagon? Do you have any objective reason to do that? Or is it just, the emotions coming into play there again?
Talk to us about what differentiates Savage Growth Partners.
The big thing that differentiates Savage Growth Partners is taking that high level view. So, everything that we do on the marketing front is designed to plug into the overall business ecosystem. I'm a really big believer that marketing has to be connected with sales, and sales has to be connected with operations, and they all kind of, intersect between each other. Especially once you get to a certain size with your business, it's very important to have the view of the entire customer journey from when they first hear about your brand to when they keep coming back for more. And so with all of our clients, we take that deep dive approach to figure out, okay, what does your sales process look like? What's your close rate? What's your follow-up process look like on the sales front? How are you delivering your services? What's your lifetime value of people when they come in? What's the overall sentiment surrounding your brand? What's some feedback you've gotten surrounding, your customer service? All these different pieces, they all factor in to business growth as a whole. So we're marketing, but I always try to kind of put marketing and business growth together, because I think people see marketing in the silo and they start to think about the tactics of like, okay, we need somebody to do Facebook ads. Well, that may be true, but you want to make sure that your strategy when you do that is strong and solid, but you also want to make sure that whatever you're doing on this channel is supporting what you're doing on this channel, which is supporting everything further down the line. So that's the big differentiator, is that nothing is ever in a silo with us. We consider every little bit and piece of the business to really build something that's sustainable and real, and not just focused on one tactic that you may not be able to lean on in the future. For example, Facebook ads. What if your ad account gets banned, or Facebook ads they could just decide that they want to close up shop and not run ads on Facebook anymore for whatever reason, So you want to build that overall brand and business that is successful because it's got a really strong strategy and process around it.
I think that everything we've talked about so far in this episode, from the marketing itself to the marketing analytics, is anchored in marketing and growth. You can't
Mhm.
decouple one from the other. We've got to
Mhm.
look at that, right? It's all about the numbers. Now,
Mhm.
as we're coming to the end of our show here, in the introduction, you said, oh, we've got the background. You've got two lovely awards. Are you comfortable sharing with our audience which you received the awards for?
Yeah, so I got the 2 Comma Club award. I got that in 2021 for my work with a fitness company. We generated over $1 million, and that was
Woohoo!
off of, $100,000 in ad spend. So we got a, 10x return there, which is awesome. So yeah, that was just a little piece of hardware I got from that, and that really kind of ignited a fire within me. I love being able to tie things back to numbers and really see those outsized returns. So, yeah, that's where the award comes from.
Excellent. Where can people find you and how can
Yes.
they connect with you?
Yeah, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Jensen Savage, probably the only person on there named Jensen Savage. Also, my website, jensensavage.com. Or if you're interested in my company, that is savagegrowthpartners.com. And yeah, you can get in touch with me or my team there.
Excellent. Last question. It is our signature question of the podcast. If we peeked into your closet, there's probably some pair of shoes, some shirts, some style of clothing, some accessory, something that embodies who you are, Jensen Savage, and said, this is me, this is my personality, and this is why I'm represented by glitter shoes. I'm a glitter shoes gal. What are you, Jensen? Talk to us. What are we looking at in your closet?
So I've got a pair of Gucci loafers that are the I forgot which kind they're called, but they're like the black loafers, and they've got the green and red strap with the gold horse bit. Oh, they're the horse bit ones. That's what they're called. So I've got those, and I think that describes me as a person because they're high quality. They're they're worth the price. They're those kind of shoes that you have for 15, 20 years, and all you've got to do is get them resold once or twice. So that focus on quality, I think, comes through in everything that I do. And so I think that represents me.
Excellent. So with that, Jensen Savage, founder of savagegrowthpartners.com, have a look at what she's got, and we thank you so much for being on our show.
Thanks for having me.